So welcome again to Feature Fridays, and York, thank you very much for joining me today. My name is Guy Bartram, Product Marketing Manager for Cloud Director, and York, you're
Yeah,
introduced.
I'm Jörg. I'm a technical product manager at VMware.
Excellent, thank you. And today we're going to talk about some new hands-on labs that are available to everyone. We wanted to make sure that everyone is able to experience the great new features in Cloud Director and to have a play with them. So, York, just want to give us an overview. What is hands-on labs first for those who aren't familiar with hands-on labs?
Mhm. Yeah, so Hands-on Labs is a very great platform that allows people to play around with the whole VMware product portfolio. We used to do the Hands-on Labs in the early years just at VMworld or at other big conferences, like I think the Dell Technology World and EMC World back in the days.
Yeah.
And the Hands-on Labs is a platform that allows us or allows people to deploy lab environments, small, technically nested vSphere environments that contain our VMware products, and then you can access them through the browser and just, yeah, play around with them, follow labs, install components, or learn how to use the products, learn how to install the products, and so on. And we have these different labs available since a couple of years now, not only for the actual conference for VMworld, but they are available all the time, all over the year on our VMware homepage, on the Hands-on Labs homepage, for free for everybody. And when you register and enroll to a lab, you typically get 1 or 2 hours of a lab time with a specific pod, and then you can either walk through these labs and follow the tasks that are provided in the lab book and the lab manual, or you can just use the environment and the VMware components, the vSphere platform, and the management components that are installed there, and just familiarize yourself and play around with the different features.
Okay, so they're kind of guided, but you can also go a little bit off piste if you want.
Yeah, absolutely. And well, since it's VMware, so we do data center software, and these lab pods, they simulate complete data centers. Some of them even have multi-site capabilities, so they mimic a complete data center environment. And all of that is available when you enroll. We will hopefully see that in a demo within a couple of minutes.
Okay, cool. And today, so I mean, we're looking at Cloud Director, and in Cloud Director 10.1, this new hands-on lab has been made for. Tell us what's in the hands-on lab that's new from the old, I think it was 9.5 or 9.7, the
Mhm.
one.
Yeah, so we updated the product versions for vSphere, for VCD, for vRealize Operations. The tenant app is installed there with the version that are currently GA for these products. And we also included a lot of different add-on components of our platform. So there are examples in there, for example, for the Terraform provider for VCD that we covered in depth in some of the last Feature Fridays. We have the tenant app that's installed in there and connected to VROps, vRealize Operations, and Cloud Director that you can play around. So there are a lot of components in there beyond the pure vSphere management stack.
Excellent. Okay, great. Well, let's have a look then. Do you want
Mhm.
to
Yeah,
share the screen?
yeah. So let me share my browser window here. Okay. Yeah, so for the hands-on labs, you access them, as I mentioned, just through a regular browser. Go to hol.vmware.com, and that forwards you to the main page of the hands-on labs, where you can learn a bit more about the hands-on labs platform. You can see the different documents there. You can even join the community and the community forums and get some idea about how the lab technology works in background. But the most important thing, of course, is the lab pods themselves. So they are here with the lab sections, and then you just hit the launch button, and then forwards you to the VMware Learning Platform, which is that management system for these individual lab pods. And that system, if you already attended in past the VMworld and took a hands-on labs there in a in physical way in the hands-on lab section at VMworld, it's the same system, but since it's available through the browser, you can do that all year long at any time of the day, wherever you want.
Cool.
And then, yeah, we have the lab catalog. So that's the catalog for all the different labs that are available. And as you can see, we as you might be familiar from the VM world, we cover pretty much every solution that we have in our VMware product portfolio. So it's by far not limited to just vSphere or VCD components that we are focused on, but you can experience and play around with all the different VMware products.
Yeah.
So there are hands-on labs in there for the basic vSphere functionality, a lot of them now for NSX, for Tanzu with the application modernization product portfolio. We have some end-user computing labs in there. And we even have some of our ecosystem partners that contribute some lab content there. So if you want to play around with some of the components from our ecosystem partners, that's also a very good way to familiarize yourself with them.
Brilliant. Okay. And the VCD one is brand new, isn't it? It's only been out a couple of days.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. So the labs typically get refreshed once or twice a year for the VMworld, and then they get published into that catalog and are available then over the course of the year. And the one we are talking about, or pretty much you can see these small tick boxes here. Since VMworld is coming up for this year, we are currently in progress to releasing a lot of the new versions of these different lab environments. And for the VCD one, we just released them yesterday.
Okay. Right.
Yeah. So there are different sections in there for the labs, and the ones we are interested in are in the hybrid cloud section.
Okay.
And by the way, if since all of that stuff is public available for you as a partner, of course, it's a very good tool to familiarize yourself with the VCD platform. But of course, you also can give the links to these lab pods to your customers and the end customers, and have them to get an idea about how it feels to use Cloud Director from as a tenant perspective. So you just can copy the URL of the catalog, and then after the login, people can directly access that environment.
Yeah, that's a great idea. I get a lot of service providers asking us if they have labs which they can provide to their customers to give them some hands-on time.
Absolutely. Yeah, so in the hybrid catalog, we can see there are different labs available. These labs differ in terms of the content that's in the lab guide, so the different tasks that you want to achieve. Some of them are focused on the main VCD platform, but then we also have some additional tools and add-ons for Cloud Director. We have special labs about cloud availability, and some lightning lab that's a bit shorter and just covers the most important stuff to familiarize yourself with VCD if you are not new to the topic.
So we have the cloud provider platform one is updated for 10.1. We also have the lightning labs for 10.1 as well. So
I think so, yeah.
Great.
Since they're all based on the same lab pod, so that virtual environment that mimics the data center.
Cool. Okay.
Yeah, then to start a lab, that's very straightforward. You can select one of the labs. You can see some details in there, how long it likely takes if you want to walk through each individual lab task to do that. And then you just hit that enroll button to register for the lab. If you do that the first time, you might need to log in or register with your email address to the platform system. So that's necessary that, we just track not really the progress, but we track which labs you are enrolled, and you can see them in your transcript. So the labs that you already have done and passed. So since there are likely dozens or even hundreds of labs in there, you don't lose track of what you've already done and what you haven't done yet. And it's of course also possible to provide feedback. We will see that at the end on some survey.
Okay.
Yeah, and then you just hit that start this lab button, and that now rolls out the whole data center in background. While that's happening, there's some task or some browser compatibility test that you can run. Typically, you only need to do that once. There are no special requirements really that's you have to do. So the browser just checks for bandwidth, checks if there are some proxy settings in your browser that might not work and stuff like that. But typically there's no special requirements, so it should always work the same time.
Okay.
And then there's bandwidth test, which gives you that. Ignore that, I guess. And then let's start the lab, and Now, in background, the lab environment, so that whole data center with the vSphere platform and VCD in there gets deployed. You can see, depending on the average time it takes, that's typically within a few minutes, if even. Depending on the overall utilization of the platform, it might take a few minutes, but typically it's really pretty fast to deploy such a lab.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's really quite
Yeah.
we can deploy these labs so quickly. And then you've got the manual on the right-hand side here. So in a nutshell, then, I don't need to know anything about the products in the labs at this point. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. That is the whole point of the hands-on lab. So you really can familiarize yourself with products that are net new to you. And we have that lab guide on the right-hand side. You can play around with the console, so you can detach these different windows depending on how large your screen is. You can place them in different sections, and or even if you have dual screens, to place them into different screens to have a very convenient feeling when you work with the lab environment.
Okay.
The lab guide content itself, that's really where you just like flipping through a lab manual. So you can see some generic guidance, and then you have the table of content and the different pages in here. And then you just can flip forward and backward and scroll to the different modules and the content in the lab manual.
Okay. Okay.
So if you use it the first time, it's a good idea to really read through the first section of that lab guidance, because that gives you a good idea about how the labs are structured, how you access the different components in the labs, and just the regular things, how to follow the lab manual. Once you get more and more familiar with the different labs, you typically skip to the first parts with the how to access the console, and then the different keyboard entry types and so on, and really skip to the parts where you jump with the where you go with the first lab tasks.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, like all good technical people, will probably go straight through into the modules.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, and then you can first way to use the hands-on lab is really to walk through the different modules and do the lab tasks. So here we are in the module to introduce with the introduction to VCD, where you can find some content about the introduction itself, explanation of the lab environment, and then it really gives you a pretty good step-by-step guide where to start and what to do to walk through the individual steps. So you can follow these steps, and they should be detailed enough that you really typically don't get lost, or they don't really miss a step to walk you through that. So you can really follow these step-by-step guides and go along with the lab.
Just if you go back a couple of pages, it said at the beginning what it was going to cover in this module. So I noticed there was, those are the technologies, but here you go.
Yeah.
So resources, NSX V in this case, networking, CPOM. Oh, that's great. So CPOM's included in this.
Yeah, for some parts. So that's really the different, let's say, features of the solution or of the platform that are explained in the lab. So if you walk through the labs step by step, then there are some sections in there that really show you, I guess, for CPOM, how you really publish a vCenter into for a tenant for direct access, for example.
Okay, great, brilliant.
Yeah, to access the lab console, that's something where you just click inside the main window here for the browser. And then again, with the console, play around with the different sections that you have to detach the console to. You can go in full screen mode to just enlarge the screen here. If you don't use the lab manual, you can flip that to the side and then maximize the screen just to get a better user experience for that. One thing that is typically a good idea when you access the console, the lab pod, is the README file that's typically on the desktop here, because that shows you all the different components and things like credentials. They are typically also mentioned in the lab guide when you come to a certain step, but if you don't follow the lab guide step by step, then the README file is a good idea to get an idea of the different credentials, how to log into the different components.
Okay, great. So that's the VCD lab. So in this particular module, then we're covering these functions and features. And What isn't covered in the VCD lab that you think in your mind is everything pretty much covered?
Yeah, so that gives an introduction for VCD, so the provider portal, the tenant portal, different features like the network configuration, since that's a big part in VCD, obviously, and the CPOM functionality.
Right.
But if we go back to the main part of the manual, which is here for the table of content, you can see that we have an introduction to VCD, to the platform, and then other modules about the consumption. So that's the part that mainly focuses on the tenant experience in the tenant portal, how to deploy vApps from the catalog, how to do different network connections with your org networks and so on. And we have what's new in 10.1. So that's just a focus on new features that were introduced in VCD 10.1. And then there's one lab that's not really in the hands-on labs, obviously, but gives you some click-through experience for the Cloud Director service, that new service offering for VCD as a service.
Yeah, and I think that takes you through the whole cloud provider hub,
Mm-hmm.
ordering of the service, provisioning of service, and life cycle.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And yeah, corresponding to that, I mean, that's the lab for the basic platform. We've seen in the big catalog of the hands-on labs that there are other VCD-related labs on there. One is more focused on multi-site and cloud availability, where you set up different replication and disaster recovery as a service functionality. And then there's one for tools and extensions, which walks you through the VROps tenant app, through orchestrated workflows as a service. I think Terraform is in there with some examples. And I think even container service extensions is a small part of the lab.
Brilliant, brilliant. Well, this is going to be a really useful resource for people looking at, looking at VCD from new, but also
Mm-hmm.
looking at upgrading to 10.1 to be able to get their hands on and see what is actually new in 10.1.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So if you follow the lab guide, that's, if you are not new to the platform, a very safe way to play around. You don't have to, set up your own lab environment and spend a lot of time just getting the platform installed, because that's already prepared for you. And the labs are really designed in a way that they give you, or they allow you to learn the things that really matter. Typically, the pure installation of a product is not that exciting. You usually follow the installation guide, and after all, you do it just once in your environment, and it's typically very specific to that environment. However, when it comes to the usage of our solutions and the platform, that's really where you can learn a lot, and where you get a lot of experience when you really get your hands on, rather than seeing it from demos or just reading it from the manuals.
Yeah, so great. I think this would be a really good new facility as well for people who are going to do some of the VMware Cloud Director sessions at VMworld, to kind of prep themselves a little bit in terms of the functionality, so they can get the maximum benefit out of that session as well.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, let's have a look into the details of the lab pod. So typically you access all of that through the browser. So I'm going to open up the Chrome browser in the console. And you can see, while that is loading, that in the bookmarks bar of the browser, there are bookmarks for all the different components that are installed in that lab environment. So we have access to the vCenter server and the vSphere platform underneath. We see the provider portal for the VCD installation. You can even see we have site A, site B, so it's a multi-site installation that mimics even multiple data centers. And we have the actual tenant access for the tenant portal of the with tenant 1 and tenant 2, and you can also see different other components like the tenant app that's installed, and login site is installed in that lab environment as well. These are not part of the lab guide for this particular lab. They are mentioned in that other lab, but it's the same, lab pod, so the same infrastructure that's available. And of course, you always can use that lab pod to skip the part with the lab guide and just play around and familiarize yourself in some sort of a sandbox environment.
Yeah, I was going to say, how much control do you really have? I mean, you could actually go in here and do sort of configuration changes to test things out, right? I mean,
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, you get the lab guide we've seen in the README file.
Mhm.
You really get administrative access to the environment.
Mm.
The whole environment, typically also, by the way, the passwords are stored in the browser history for your convenience, so it's very straightforward to log in with the different things.
Mhm.
And if you miss a password, either check the lab guide or the README
The README file, yeah.
the README file. Yeah. But in that lab environment, it is technically a completely nested environment. So it runs, it's not simulated. When we have a look at the vCenter servers that are available here and backing up the provider VDCs, these are really instances of vCenter servers that are running in the lab pod, and you got full administrative access to them. So
Right.
you can play around, you can follow the lab guide and do the steps that are that you are supposed to do to learn that stuff, but you can really use it as a sandbox and play around and of course even break it if you want and see what happens if you do some configuration switches here and there. The lab pod, when you remember when we enrolled for the lab and it took these few seconds or a few minutes to deploy a lab, it's really one particular instance of that whole environment that's deployed just for these 1 hour that
Yeah.
you get that to. So if you break anything, it's just your lab pod that you break, but it's not possible for you to break something that's used by somebody else. So that's the benefit of the hands-on labs. And our engineers, oh, obviously it uses the VMware platform. Technically, it uses even VCD beneath that. Might be a good topic for a different session to learn more about the VMware Learning Platform and how it's being used and how it uses the VCD technologies for multi-tenancy. But it's really designed that you can use that as a sandbox. And if you break something, you just break your individual lab pod. And once you end that and roll for another time, you get a new one. So yeah, that's pretty
Cool.
straightforward.
If only life was that easy.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. So for the lab environment, since we are talking about that, typically depending on the lab, it's assigned for a certain amount of time where you have access to this particular pod. You can try to extend or request some time extension depending on the utilization of the overall environment that's possible, or sometimes you might get a disapproval if there are not enough resources available, but you can extend that lease duration or the lab time for some time, which allows you to play a bit more around for that.
Excellent. Okay.
Yeah, in the lab pods, as we've seen, it's a Cloud Director installation with different vCenter servers as backend. We have a bunch of tenants configured with their tenant access. We have vRealize operations in there and the tenant app in there. Login side is installed as well, so that you really can familiarize yourself with the whole platform and all the components that belong to the cloud provider platform.
And is this some of it, I guess, is pre-configured to, obviously here we've configured the vCenter resources already into VCD, but
Mhm.
if we were to start doing tenant app configuration for vRealize operations, is you're going to be doing more of the customization than
Yeah.
the actual
Mhm. So
configuration.
that's in the lab guide of the second lab with the tools and extensions. But since it's the same lab pod, all the components are already pre-installed. But for some labs, like for the tenant app, part of the lab guide will ask you to enable the tenant app for particular tenants and then define some
Okay.
pricing policies and stuff like that.
Excellent, excellent. Oh, great. So people could use the feature Friday that we did on pricing policies and come in here and actually do it themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm not sure for which one, but these lab pods, well, you can use them to familiarize yourself with the different products. But of course, they are also a nice way to show people what the Cloud Director platform is capable of. So we have some internally within VMware, we have a comparable platform, another tenant on that VMware Learning platform, where we use literally the same hands-on labs pod for demos, for example. And whenever you see some feature recordings, or perhaps, I'm not even sure, don't remember, but in some of the old Feature Fridays, I might even have used some of the these pods for the demonstrations.
Yeah, it's a quick and easy way to get it up and running.
Yeah, absolutely. And you don't have to care about the well, all the installation bits and pieces and putting that all together.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, technically, the LabPod, by the way, that machine that you access in the browser, that is the control center or this main console, which is a Windows domain controller for this LabPod. So, and you get administrative access to that. So you really can play around with the whole that whole nested environment.
Brilliant.
One limitation that you have, or two limitations that you have in the hands-on labs, yeah, pretty obviously. First of all, you don't get access to the underlying physical infrastructure. I mean, that's the whole thing of the LabPods, that you play around in your sandbox, but it's your sandbox and you're limited to that sandbox, so you don't break something from anybody else.
Mm-hmm.
And for security reasons, there's no outbound internet access. So you cannot open up a new browser tab and then Google something or download some new stuff in there. That's not going to work.
Yeah, that makes sense. Got to keep it.
But for all the steps in the lab guide, when some software is needed for particular things to, I don't know, upload a UI plugin, or I think some examples for the Terraform scripts, they are typically located on either on the desktop or on the C drive of that main console. So it's already prepared, that you have already everything self-contained in the lab environment.
Yeah, everything that you need is there, and the guide will tell you where to find it all.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, that's great. I mean, this is going to be useful utility.
Yeah, absolutely. And once you familiarize yourself with these hands-on labs, I mean, technically, I find it amazing that it's possible to really spin up these complete multi-site data centers within 1 minute.
Yeah.
And as I mentioned, we might do another Feature Friday just to show off the VMware Learning Platform and how that works, because it's all based on Cloud Director. That's really amazing technology that we use in background. It scales very well since we use it for the VMworld events.
Yeah.
And once you get used to that, it's a very good way to learn the VMware products and even to expand your horizon, not only focusing on the products that you work with daily on a daily basis, and you might already have your own test environment and your own labs for VCD if you're a service provider. But if we go back to the overall hands-on labs catalog, there are so many different other VMware solutions in there where you might not have the physical resources yet to install them, or not enough knowledge to install them, or even no idea how to start. And then the hands-on labs are a very good way, because they give you some good step-by-step guidance how to walk through, I don't know, VMware Horizon end user computing technology, just to familiarize yourself with the technology.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, that's great. Well, listen, thank you very much. I think this has been a really good kind of overview of the hands-on labs. I'm really super pleased, obviously, that we've now got a 10.1 lab up and running with all of these great new features that are in Cloud Director 10.1, and all of the kind of ancillary components as well, which are just as important, like object storage and container service extension and tenant app. So yeah, this is really great to see. Thank you very much for showing us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sure. When you are finished with the lab, well, you can either just let the time running out and then the system will delete your lab environment at the end, but just to save resources and be a good citizen in the hands-on labs, it's a good idea just to end the lab. Yeah. So to confirm that you are finished with the lab. Oh, by the way, if you walk away from that environment, the whole environment will be suspended again for resource saving. But if you are within your lab time, then you can always go back to, you get your lab back with the state where you left it. So that's like when you, at the VMworld conference, you take a hands-on labs and then you walk away to do some short break or to talk to somebody, and then you go back, you really can continue as long as you are within the time duration. After the time duration, it really removes and deletes the app, so all your state is lost.
How does it know that there's does it detect inactivity for a certain time? Okay.
Yeah. And then you will see another splash screen that just shows that your lab progress is being saved, and then you can go back to that.
That's brilliant.
when you are finished, really hit that end the lab button to confirm that you can delete it and free the resources up again. And then once that is done, at the end, there's also the survey, and that is something I really want to encourage you to take the survey and fill out the information there, because that survey really goes back well to us and the people we work with to create the lab content, the lab manual, and the different components that are in the labs. And it really helps us to define for the next iteration and the next version of the lab content what we want to get in there.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's particularly important. This, I mean, there is a lot of effort from our team, and a couple of names were mentioned there at the beginning of the captains.
Yeah,
this is another aspect of their role they have to do, and keeping on top of this is tough. Yeah.
So you can see the lab authors. So these are typically VMware colleagues that are designing labs and spend their time to get the lab content in there.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Is there anything else to show on that?
No, I think that's it for this. Have fun enjoying the lab. One note, since VMworld is coming up, it can be that during the VMworld weeks or around these, that they might restrict access to the hands-on lab, since we need the resources for all the attendees of VMworld. Of course, this year it's obviously a first time, which works different than usual, but the overall the hands-on labs are online 24/7 all year long. So you can, whenever you have a break from your day work or you want to test out something, then the hands-on labs are a very good way to get yourself a sandbox environment for the different products and VMware solutions.
Brilliant. Well, listen, thank you very much, Jörg, and to all our partners watching the video, please go ahead and test out the 10.1 new functionality, and yeah, hopefully you find the hands-on labs, and there's plenty of other labs to take as well. If you want to look at NSXT or any of our other solutions, there's lots of choice there. So please knock yourself out in a safe sandbox. Cheers.
Cheers, thanks.